Hi everyone. Hello. So we'll start with the very basic things. Like a few years ago, if somebody wanted to track a ship in the middle of an ocean, right? So they would need access to very high profile things like the government systems, military sensors, or even expensive satellite imagery. But today, a researcher with a laptop and internet connection and with the right methodology, which we are going to discuss, can do something remarkably similar. The maritime OSINT has transformed the ocean from one of the least visible environment on the earth to the rich source of intelligence. So the next time we are going to take a deep dive into how ships communicate, what they unintentionally expose, and how we as investigators can use that information to uncover activity beyond oceans. And that is where our talks comes into play, beyond AIS, a practitioner's verification chain for maritime ocean. But as we say, with great powers come great responsibility, we would like to give some disclaimers first. So, the disclaimer one is that the content discussed on this platform is meant for educational purpose only. So, the misuse of any information herein shall be the sole liability of the abuser. Disclaimer two is that this talk bears no authorization from speaker's employer. Having said that, we would just go further.
Thank you, Shubham. So, before we start, now just understand and take a step back to look at how things started. Well, initially it was we are just cybersecurity enthusiast guy. We didn't know much about the OSINT. Well, one day we decided to form a CTF team and we started to play competition. At that time, we were playing the online CTF DEFCON competition about the maritime OSINT. And it started to, the challenges started to pique our interest. It started to pique our curiosity and something that sprinkled in our mind that, something strange is happening. And that's where we started to looking more deep and deep into it. And after that, one thing led to the another. And with this curiosity, we ended up with the maritime OSINT. Now, before we move forward, let's clear the agenda first. Now, in this talk, we are going to deep dive into the parts of how maritime OSINT works, how we are going to track the ships using the AIS, as well as we are going to look into the satellite-based AIS. We're moving forward to the VSAT, CCTV cams, and looking into the different resources. The thing is that we need to make sure that this is not just about the tools. We are going to look into the technique itself because the technique is what make an OSINT practitioner, analyst, or a researcher different. Because we have to focus on the techniques, what different techniques we can use. Then that way we are moving forward. Leading to that, a short introduction of who I am. So my name is Sagar Tiwari. I'm working as an independent cybersecurity and OSINT researcher for the past 5 to 6 years. I'm an enthusiast guy. I'm working with independently with lots of firms, including the Threat Force, Maltigo, Vicarious, and dozens of other firms. And with them, I have published over 250 articles on cybersecurity, threat intelligence, as well as on the OSINT. Together with Shubham Kumar, I formed this research and training team, F Society Double O, and together we have honor to share the stage of around 30 plus international conferences, including the SANS Ocean Summit, Activity, PH Talks, and various other. Over to you, Shubham.
So I'm Shubham Kumar, and currently I'm a senior security analyst. And just like Saga, I'm a OSINT enthusiast here, just like all of you, and moreover a cybersecurity evangelist. So together with Saga, we have presented a lot of research ranging from science to PH talks, and we really love this field. And with that, we will love to go further, and that is the table of contents in order to make you understand like how we are going to delve deeper. So we'll start with the first things, that is what is OSINT. We'll try to understand the importance of it, and then we will delve into the level 3 that we define as a basic, that is AIS, because if we are going from beyond the part, we need to understand what it is. And then we will go into the SAT AIS and the human layers and case studies and VSAT, and with that we will end the part of the conclusion. So, having said that, we'll move forward. And that's is the very basic. And that is the OPSEC. So even before you start any investigations, you need to, harden your own machines and yourself too. And that is where the first part comes in. That is the sock puppet accounts. So sock puppet accounts are very important because they intend to help you create an identity, help you to protect yourself. How you can do that? You can create your own similar as they say, that fake social media accounts, your burner email identities, or you can also utilize alternate profiles or forums for create an alternate identity of yourself. What you can use platforms such as TempMail, or you can generate your fake identities by fake identity generators. That is where you can also utilize, since now AI images farther that possible, you can create GAN images for your localized accounts, and you can utilize during your own investigations because they are very much necessary for your open source intelligence that is there, or threat intelligence, or undercover, or even undercover journalism that you are going to proceed. Then we'll move forward with the further part of it, and that is the the VMs, the OS that are very much designed to help you during your own investigations. One of them that we like, other than Tails OS, is Honix. So Honix is also a privacy-focused operating system, which is made to help you improve your anonymity. So as you are gathering further and dwelling deep down into your own investigations, whether it be tracking vessels, whether it be trying to uncover any operations out there, you need these OSs because they have built-in securities, whether it be proxy chains in themselves, right? So that is where we widely use during our own investigations. So how it is that it prevents basically your IP leakages which are there. It has a very good compartmentalization, that is a part, and it also helps you to protect unwanted application mistakes which you are continuously opening. Because as they say, whenever you are delving deep dive into an internet, you are leaving footprints. That is how you can reduce a bit of them, and they are very much useful for your high risk investigations. Moving further, we will have something that we traditionally utilize a lot, and that is a remote browser isolations. They are a very good ones because there you can access the resources from your web browser, which basically runs on a remote server or even a cloud container that is totally segregated or isolated from your own machine that is out there. How it helps? Because these are just remotely isolated parts, so it is a safe visual information that you can pull from different web pages, and also you can sanitize your own environment during that process. So it helps you to be protected from malicious website, or even the tracking parts of the cookies even themselves, or even the phishing page or malicious scripts that are continuously running tracking you. And having said that, once we have gathered and cleared all our bases from these OPSEC, ranging from your SOC prevent to your OS and to your browser isolations, we can move further now. And that is the part of Maritime OSINT. So OSINT is what? OSINT is the ability and more of an art that we would say that enables you to collect, analyze, and disseminate the information that is publicly available to you. These informations can range from your newspaper clips to even the parts of your social media profiles. So, taking everything into account, it helps you to form a bit of a information part there. Now, when we are dealing with maritime domains, whether it be shipping, fishing, or even the deep research vessels, or the NOTAMs, which are generally proposed by different governments, that is where maritime OSINT comes into play, because you can now use all these techniques in order to monitor it. So how does it do? It ranges from your AIS, which we have defined and we will be defining further, to the satellite imagery that you have observed, to the RF or the signal intelligence that we do have, and moreover the global records from which we can get the real-time operational picture of the world ocean. Now, the further, the part where is important. So as we said, and much more further, that ocean covers basically 70% of our planet, right? It's vast, it's remote. However, if you do understand that most of the global logistics flow through your ocean itself, that is almost 90% of it. And some of these news that you can see here, whether it be the rightmost corner of it, right, whether it be the Hormuz war summary for mariners. This is a very recent event that happened and is continuously affecting us because it is affecting the global economics altogether, and ranging from not just that to the cyber operations that are continuously taking place in. Other than that part is a tanker hijack of Yemen. So there are multiple piracy operations that are continuously going on, which drives to through various government organizations where different ships and vessels are continuously hijacked, and they also cause a lot of loss in the global chain operations. And that is where Maritime OSINT gives you a very good power in order to understand what is happening, where it is happening, and how you can track it. So you can contribute to a much more operationalized safety of our oceans and to our nation itself. And moving forward, now we will take a deep dive into the key importance. And for that, we have Sagar.
Yeah. So, like Shubham has already discussed the key case studies that are being happening, the global conflicts that are continuously running show us that that is the need of an hour to look into the maritime ocean in a great perspective. And here we'll be discussing the few key importance factors. The first, as Shubham has already mentioned, that 70% of the entire trade is happening through the sea routes only, which is include the crude oil, the logistics, the transportations, the cargo, and in different formats. So it is very much important to track and identify any kind of illegal, illicit activities or maybe the piracy operations that might be happening, and to continuously perform the surveillance in the international or the territorial water. So every country, every nation has their own international water regulations, and they need to make sure that the boundaries are in particular checks. All the kind of activities, all the kind of vessels movement should be in a particular order to have the particular kind of swift trade movement against any sort of maybe the disruption of the movement like we have seen because of the conflicts. It's always happened that some of the other straits is getting blocked and the global trade might get affected. Apart from the war scenarios, one of the key factors for the maritime ocean is the environmental protection, as there are lots of oil spillage cases or maybe illegal fishing that is might be happening. Illegal fishing in lots of perspective we are going to cover in subsequent slides that might be happening, and that is also helpful in when we are talking through the perspective of the maritime ocean. And for the last is the search and the rescue operations that is happening, because maritime ocean give you the real time feed. These time feeds helps you to understand that, because in a search and rescue operations, timing is a very critical moment, and every second counts in that matter. So having data in the emergency sections, which is flow through the navtex codes, like these are being the broadcasting codes. So search and rescue operations can be performed in a very quick manner. Moving forward, we have, like, before we delve into the working, we will just cover some basic terminologies that we are going to hear in the subsequent slides. And as we can see that because ships are like the giant ICS floating, because they have lots of internet connectivity, lots of radio bands connectivity, because they want to be like working. It's like a computer that is working and floating a 300 gross tonnage ship. So starting with, we have the very first and the most pivotal is that is the AIS, or the automatic identification system. So basically, these are the transponders that are being regulated to transpond and broadcast certain messages that include the ship name, the number, the identities, the gross tonnage of the ship, from where it was traveling, from where it is going, as well as in some cases the recent port calls. We're going to discuss AIS further on. Moving forward, the next is the VSAT, or as we call a very small aperture terminals. So basically, these are like the regular satellite dish that we have on our homes and house structures, and it is important for these vessels to connect to the internet. So all the marine carriers are there; they can use and connect to the internet. For that, VSAT terminals are very important. We're going to understand how it is important from the perspective of maritime investigation. Now coming forward to the third part, that is the IMO, or the International Maritime Organization. So IMO is a unique specific number that starts with the three digit of IMO, and like followed by the seven digit number like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So the entire number would be IMO 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. This number is unique and related to a particular vessel. It means that once this number is being assigned to a particular ship, it's going to remain for them till the end life cycle of the vessel. Moving forward, we have the another identity number that is called the MMSI or Maritime Mobile Service Identity. It's a 9-digit number, and the first three digit, like for example, the 9 digit would be 129, and the first three digit 123 represent the MID value or Maritime Identification Digit value. Well, this value do change if a vessel decides to flow under a different flag and under a different organization, maybe for a certain time period is being flowing for the country A, and after a certain time period it's flowing for country B, its MID value is going to be changed. So the very first and pivotal difference between the IMO and MMSI number is that where IMO number is meant to be constant for the entire life cycle, MMSI number can be changed if a vessel flows under different organization name, country, as and follow on. The call signs are used to understand and identify the ships as a radio operator. So every call sign helps to identify. It's like a telephonic identification for the ships to broadcast the messages. So if they have an inter ship to ship communication or ship to shore communication, they can identify each other. The hull number is like a identifying number that is printed on or painted on the hull of the ship, and it is used to identify a particular vessel. Specifically, if you're talking about the military or the government ID vessels, it is used to identify because every vessel operated by the world governments do have a hull number, so it's easy to identifying that level. Moving forward, we have, and let's take a deep dive into the what is AIS. So basically, AIS works on the VHF maritime frequencies under the NMEA 0183 sentence structures, and it uses the time division multiple access protocol. The operating frequencies of AIS is 161.975 MHz and 162.025 MHz. The message are being broadcasted upon 2 to 30 seconds depending on the vessel's status, and when the message are being broadcasted, they have the IMO number of the vessel, they have the MMSI number of the vessel, they have the call sign as we have seen, as well as the recent port call. So it is there being broadcasting, and any receiver which has the AIS based decoder can decode those messages, while these numbers are being broadcast in the open frequency, so one within just an amateur radio kit can decode and learn these messages. Now we're going to look at some of the commercial AIS aggregation platforms. So if you've been familiar with the marine vessel finder, these are quite famous one. So every platform that uses the AIS as the backend technology do have its own strengths and do have its own limitation. So how these structures work is that these are the global centralized structure which is used by the third party business application. So every receiver around the world receive these AIS signals on 165.975 megahertz or 162.025 megahertz, decode these message, and via an API sent to a centralized hub where we can see the ships in the different formats. So the vessel finder, marine vessel traffic or marine traffic, all the ships as we can see in the different color codes that tells the DV flag of the ship, like are they tankers, are they cargo ships, are they private ships, or maybe passenger ships, or maybe government operated. So every color decoding tells us what kind of ships are we looking at. But one of the biggest problem is that with the business model of the AIS ship is that they are behind a business model, like you have to pay a subscription fees to get the access of all the data, and that's where the open source platform like AIS hub comes into the picture. Now the biggest problem is that certain data that could be important for the investigation purposes, or important for the research purposes, might be hidden behind these paywalls. So for that, the AIS hub like platform is quite useful because AIS hub gives you the direct access of the receiver that is receiving this data. In a way, when a receiver is receiving this data and is being decoded in the real time, you get the data, so you are accessing directly the receiver antenna kit. So AIS hub is quite useful because you can see from which direction the ships are coming in, the entire statistics of the data, how much packets are coming in, what those packets include. So even if some kind of information is being fabricated as described in the commercially aggregated platform, you can check this, verify this data through the AIS hub, because as an OSINT practitioner, it is always important to look through the different sources of the data, not just believe on one source of the data, and where this AIS service could be quite useful. Moving forward, looking at like decoding these signals using your own SDR equipment. So you can just have a simple RTL SDR with a whip antenna and the particular decoders in the set. You can use the SDR platforms like you can use the Kino Radio, or you can have Wiki SDR, or maybe Open WebRx or Kiwi SDR as as required, and you can tune it to the AIS frequencies of 160.1975 megahertz or 162.025 megahertz, and then you can start decoding these signals. And this time you are receiving those signals on your own and then decoding it, and we can see the IMO number, MMSI number, or the call sign. And includingly, you also have the latitude and longitude, that is geographical coordinates, and you know in what position the ships are coming from. Now, the biggest problem is this: because we are receiving from the land, this is basically the terrestrial AI signal that we are receiving. It has its own restriction that we cannot listen to the lots of signal that is ranging from a very long distance, so like 20 to 40 nautical miles. That's the basic limitation that we are going to listen to it. Another kind of problem or constraint that do happen is the atmospheric interference, because the signal quality might decrease when the signal is being flowing through a very long distances. As well as what has happened is that data deduplication also happens on the receiver resources. So it needs to be happen that it needs to be deduplicated before it is being sent and analyzed for the research purposes. Now, that's where we are talking about the terrestrial AIS coverage limitation. So as we can see in the image, that the ships has a big gap. So if it's the gap is like 50 or 100 nautical miles, because the limitation for this AIS terrestrial signals are like 20 to 40 nautical miles. So the distance before that, the problem is that you cannot might hear the right data, or maybe you might not even know that there is something else in the ocean in that particular area above 100 nautical miles. That's where the limitations comes in, and for that the satellite based AIS signals do happen. So like in the remote polar region, when there is a limited infrastructures, because it all depend upon the individual receivers that are being placed around the globe, that is listening to this particular frequency and then decoding the data and providing to the maybe the centralized API hub like Marine Traffic Vessel Finder, or maybe the AIS hub, or even if itself you get into those places and put your antenna and set up the SDR setup to receive those signals, then you can might listen to those signals. But apart from that, listening through then open source part of the terrestrial AI signal, it's not possible. And that's where the satellite AIS comes into the picture. The satellite AIS basically generally use the lower Earth orbit satellites to collect AIS transmission. So it's a collection of multiple satellites that do happen, because maximum the VHF happens in the line of sight communication, the terrestrial AIS. But instead of that, satellite AIS just receive those signals and broadcast it. And these are satellites are being orbiting around 400 to 800 kilometers above the earth, and for thousands of nautical miles they can spread the data around it. So how it is being useful is that it the substantial fee that is being covered by the platforms, this is one of the problem, because you might not found satellite AIS data on the commercial aggregator platform. So that is one of the biggest challenges that the investigator faces. Now let's understand that how the satellite AIS basically works. So let's say that these ships are being sending the AIS signal to the satellite that is just receiving. It might hold the data, it might just rebroadcast this data to the satellite station that is on the ground. It might be thousands of nautical miles away. Once this satellite station get the data, it tells it to the ground station, and then it is distributed to the broadcasting near to the ship and ship or ship to shore communication. So these ships that are being so far away in the vast oceans, they might know that where the ship is particular position is, and instead of depending upon the terrestrial AIS data, they are being depending upon the satellite based system. So that is about like how the AIS work. Now let's move forward to the VSAT.
Now, now we have started with the basic hunting, right? That we have reached a point where AIS is no longer helping us. As Sagar said, that AIS does have its own limitation. So, as investigators, we do need another source of information, and that is where VSAT comes into play. Now, VSAT stands for Very Small Aperture Terminal, and it acts as a ship's internet connection while it is at sea. Now think about this for a moment, because all of the ships that we do have, they will require internet access, whether it be for the crew connectivity that is out there, or giving an update to the headquarters themselves about their own locations, or whether it be downloading important logs. So even when the AIS goes into silent, these communications needs to continue. And that is where it creates a opportunity for us to utilize something known as VSAT. Now, a VSAT is basically a terminal communication that utilizes the helps of satellites and where the satellite basically relays this information or the traffic back to the ground station when they are connected to the internet. So most of the maritime providers that we do have basically utilize two types of frequencies, whether it be the KU band or the KA band communications. And each provider basically deploys a slightly different equipments altogether. But from this intelligence perspective, we need to understand that we need to care about the fingerprints that they are creating. So, what does it do? It helps to provide you the voice over phones back to the shore, navigation that we do have, or the remote monitoring of the ship's engine that and the various systems that are linked to it. So, as Saga said, that ships are more like a giant floating ICS in themselves, and that is where the part is. Now, we'll move further, where we will try to understand the key technical points that we do have. First of all, for VSAT itself, we need a geostationary satellite that needs to be connected, right? They needs to transmit the data that we do have. There needs to be a stabilized antenna that we do have. So the VSATs are basically like slight antenna dishes that you have in your homes, and these are basically rotatable. And since they are rotatable, they are particularly aligned with the satellite, they are linked to continuously. And since they're utilizing the frequencies of KU, K, or even the C bands that we do have, because different vendors will have different part, so it provides a reliable communication out there, whether it be from the 12 to 18 gigahertz or 25 to 40 gigahertz altogether. Now, there is a part of the latency too, because the signal travels a lot of these distances up to the satellites. So it does create a bit of a latency, whether it be from ranging from 500 to 700 milliseconds as well. Other than that, we have something as called as implemented into is BUC or LNB. Both of these, what you can think about is that they amplify the signals out there itself, because if you are getting the low signals or there are a lot of noises, they basically cancel out each other, amplifies your signal altogether, and that is where the communication will be far more reliable than you can expect into the vast remote ocean, even where the AIS is not working at that point. Having moving forward with that part, we will utilize something called as for the VSAT communications that we do have. Now, what the strategies you can utilize? These are basically the dashboard that you can see in front of you. One it says of a Cobaham one. So Cobaham is one of these vendors for these VSAT communications that are deployed on the vessels or the ships that we do have, and it provides different kinds of information ranging from your location to your positions to the frequency being utilized to even the speeds that we do have, and it provides different other functionality depending on the level of the access that you do have. Now, since all of these VSAT, we are much more interested in the fingerprinting of it. So that is where we are going to utilize different techniques. So we are going to understand about the banner analysis that we do have, or even the port scanning. So different platforms ranging from Shodan to Census, they basically systematically catalog all of these dashboards into themselves. And there you can utilize your techniques such as banner grabbing in themselves, because all of these dashboards, the VSAT one, for example, the Cobaham one, will have something as Cobaham and the version written into it, whether it be the 600 or 900 different series of it. Having goes further, yeah. So going further, you can see there is a part of the ocean that you can utilize and see. Now, once you have gathered your whole information from your search engine, whether it be the census or Shodan in particular, and you have gathered the location of it, you can use such as Google Maps in order to identify the location of your where your ship is located. This method is very much useful. Why? Because it helps you to understand where your vessel is actually located at a particular point of time in the ocean itself, where even the AIS has sometimes failed. Now, combining this with various other techniques, we can get different kinds of metadata too, which we will discuss a bit further. Having moving forward, we you can see that Sagar has stated that for AIS investigations we have different kinds of platforms such as marine traffic, but we have utilized a vessel finder. Now, all of these platforms do provide different kinds of detail, right? Ranging from their own voyage history that were there, their port calls that were there, or even the locations. As you can see in the map itself, there are different kinds of color that have been provided, right? These are all these ships. So once you have tracked a vessel through even VSAT where AIS has gone dark, so what we can do is we can establish the authenticity right now and the accuracy that we are trying to establish in this step itself. Now, the vessel that we are currently tracking and showing you was both seen by AIS and VSAT in particular, and we want to state the accuracy of both of them to be there from VSAT perspective, that we locate the ship near the harbor itself, and then we utilize the AIS-based platforms, for example, the vessel finder, in order to track that location. And guess what? Both of them came at the same time, at the same place itself. There was a bit of a latency gap, as you know, that we stated. However, it was far more closer. So what happens here? That even if AIS has been turned off or even has been spoofed or anything goes out there, you can utilize these different techniques in order to find the location of these so-called dark ships out there, right? Now, you can confirm it further, ensuring that the data is far more reliable through these techniques. Now, we can move further. Once uh, back a bit, yeah. Now, other part is through this information that we are showing. These are the other ships informations that we have been collectively getting the information through even the VSAT portion, and you can see the different locations of the ships that are put out there. You can identify the locations through the geo coordinates that are continuously provided on these dashboards that you do have. So the basic process we can understand is first you can identify the vendor that you have. For example, take it for the Go Baham, take a series for 600 or even 900 for that part. Then you can utilize these search engines in order to find the banner information or the port informations, and then you can get the dashboard that you have. From the dashboard that you have, you can use different locations or coordinates in order to pinpoint where your vessel is seen. And then you can utilize AIS based platforms, or even not just that, you can utilize Google Maps in journal to identify the locations where the ship was actually seen or where it has traveled. So these are more of a comprehensive information that you can obtain from various resources. And why this is important, guys? Because in OSINT, it's not a very good thing to rely on just one platform. You need to identify your information from various other platforms in order to form a collective intelligence. Now, we can move forward. So once we do have, we will now introduce you to the part of visual confirmation. So understand this. Imagine that you have identified a vessel through VSAT and maritime records or even the AIS out there. Can we actually see it? So in many of the cases, the answer can be yes. From where? The port, the harbor, the shipping terminals often provide these CCTV feeds. If we know approximately where your vessel should be at a particular time by calculating the coordinates, the ship speed in themselves, these cameras can help you verify its presence. And this becomes particularly useful for when there are different port visit for a different vessel that has been seen, or even for a suspicious activities that you think, or even for the sanction evasion that we are generally seeing even during the state that we are currently living in, and for the various cargo operations that you can understand. So a vessel even may hide its AIS signal, but it cannot hide from these cameras overlooking the harbors itself. That you can get this information from various sites, whether it be windy in themselves, that help you to identify where this port can be seen. And as you can see in the image itself, it shows you a camera where it's confirming the visual presence of a vessel that we have been tracking through various other sources. So moving forward. Now, the public webcams that we do have, they provide another visual source of information. And now, around the world itself, there are thousands and thousands of webcams that are continuously monitoring your waterways, the canals, the bridge that we do have, these ports. So these cameras, the webcams that you are seeing, they provide a near real-time visibility of your marine activity that is going on the ship or the boat itself. For investigators, thus webcams offer extremely something important. We can combine it, as he said, with our VSAT information, with our mapping analysis, or even the AIS information to confirm the other part that where the vessel is actually, we understand, can be seen. These can be, um, what by utilizing various techniques from ranging from docking to the cruising hours that we do have. And when you come out there, you will be able to get the location of these webcams or even the port cams that you do have to get the information of the ship that you are trying to track about. But for that, you have to understand where the ship can be seen by understanding the port calls that it did have or the recent activity that it showed out there. So the step is basically to strengthen our confidence in the assessment that we have and enable the actionable finding that we are presenting. Moving forward, we do have a case study, and for that we have Sagar.
Thank you, Shubham. So, like moving forward, we just try to understand and see the case study. So, initially, we studying about a particular vessel, and we have the IMO number of the vessel. Once we search the IMO number of the vessel, we get to find the ID, that the name of the vessel, and we have the complete lot of voyage record of nearly a decade from 2016 to 2026. So, once we start having the data, we can start seeing its movement through lots of positions, and here we can see a loitering events are basically where the vessel was at a particular instance of the time and it has been registered. So we can see the mmsi imo number, the call sign, the dates of the data, the name. And once we start seeing these kinds of information, we can see a lots of movement here. So we can zoom in and we can see and what part of the oceanic part this ship was moving in. And once we start seeing, we can see the registry records. We can start fingering into understanding that what kind of information is being coming in. So we can see that there were like 97 port visits from these particular area of China, Sri Lanka, United States of America, and three more. We have seen that there were zero encounter events and more than 1400 loitering events that were being registered by this vessel. Now, this vessel was a particular set of interest because of the recent conflict that was happening. We found that this vessel was loitering at a particular incident that was happening in the Indian suboceanic continent region, and this particular ship was turning off their AIS again, up and down, up and down. It's like basically spoofing the entirety of what the ship meant to do. So that kind of raised our interest, and we started looking into the different port visits that it has over the time period on try to match with the other kind of significant incidents that are happening. So we are seeing the different exclusive economic zones where the ship was, like the Chinese EZ overlapping with the Philippines EZ, the Vietnamese EZ, or maybe the United States EZ. We were seeing the different kinds of events that were being registered. Now, what we can do further on is to look at these economic zones where we can see in what particular time zone they were being loitering events were reported. And once we have the vessel flight the data, we can even use some AI based tools to analyze the data, the logs. Like we are using Perplexity here to analyze the logs here and plot the graphs to understand the actual seismic activity, that what kind of vessel. So we not got to know the seismic vessel and the other kind of information. So you have the logs in the form of Excel sheet that you can download, and you can use the AI prompt tools to understand and make sense of this data in a quite useful and handful way. Moving forward to the our next case study, it's a quite famous in the recent time and quite interesting one also. So we got to know, we were following the news and we got to know that there was this one particular interesting vessel that was reported known as the Bella 1 with an IMO ID of 9230880, and a certain MMSI number was voyaging from through the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean towards the European side. So this vessel was quite in news because it was being sanctioned by the United States, and it was trying to escape that zone. So once we start looking into the data, we can see that the position received by this vessel was 21 days ago. So basically, it just stopped, maybe in a stop in AIS, so it cannot be tracked on the public-based platforms, or maybe it has been escaped the terrestrial AIS zone. So we just have to look into the different platform and use the different techniques to see what kind of information we can gather in. So once we start uh, looking through the IMO number, we found that, as we have mentioned, that the IMO number remains constant for the entire life cycle of the vessel. So we can see that this IMO number was remaining for the significant five different names. At that time, it has changed its name, it has changed its ownership. So that kind of flag, like it could be the by default ownership changes that might be happening, or it might be happening that it is being changing its ownership, changing its MID value, hence changing its MMSI, try to change its identity to hide and become a part of a dark fleet or a ghost fleet, as you know. So basically, dark fleet and ghost fleets are those kinds of ships that deliberately try to hide their identity so they cannot be tracked and escape those sanctions or ease that zones. So we've started seeing that once we have started seeing that when it was in the movement itself, it changes its name from Bella 1 to Marinera. So basically, it changes MMSI value. So in the real time, we can see that the data that is being broadcasted was for a particular, let's say for country A, it has been broadcasted, and as soon as it changes MID value, its name and its entire identity has been changed to something different ship. As we can see here, in this ship was moving in the North Atlantic zone, so it was trying to escape the sanction zone, but it has been caught up, and the entire news media industry was following this thing. So we have tried this ship across the following days and tried to see that entire entity of the AIS spoofing that was happening in real time, and the what the ghost ships and how to the one of the example of how you can look through the pivots of the ghost shipping. Now, that brings us to the conclusion and the overall summary. So we have to understand that the modern threats are real and OSINT is required because it's a technique, it's a tool that is in your browser, and it doesn't require you to have a lots of stuff with you. It just is the right set of techniques, right set of tools. You can decode the data, you can have the information, and you can perform the analysis upon those sorts of information. We have to understand that maritime security risk is being increasing because these exposed VSAT devices allow lots of real-time tracking. Maritime vessels do happen, and in our own research we have found that there are lots of significant risks that are being happening through the VSAT terminals, exposed VSAT terminals that might be happening. So the vendors needs to patch those exposed terminals. Apart from that, the webcam threat is also quite real because these do provide the visual intelligence in some time, because this is quite important when we are looking at through the from the investigation or the research perspective of the views. So we have to understand that in the end, somewhere someone is watching you. And with that, we'd like to thank you to the entire OceanCon team to give us this platform. If you have any query, you can message us, and this is our website link. You can connect with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Particular question. Uh, We can see one question in the YouTube stream. What are some of the less known use cases of the maritime ocean? So I guess like we have what we have shared through the case studies that the when you are looking at from the ghost ships or the dark ships happening from the investigative journalism point of view, it's become quite useful to use this maritime ocean techniques from the threat intelligence. Also in case of the specifically from the maritime vendors, it's quite useful to know that where your ships are being there, as we've seen tell in the key feature segment, that it is important to track and identify any kind of illicit activity. So as we can see right now, whenever a conflict happen, the only checkpoint and the check loop happen is through those streets, and they blockage the maritime vessels, hence blockage the entire global economy. So it's always important from the intelligence perspective view that what is actually happening, and before an event even happen, these insights helps you to understand the case and the things that are happening in the real time. So in that way, it has lots of perspective from the different case studies. Uh, okay, so Uh, yeah. So, what was the biggest analysis from the case studies? Okay, I can see some of the questions. I'll just start seeing from the top. Yeah. Mm, Shodan's pay. Do we have any free alternative? So yeah, you can. There are like a binary edge you can use. You can use Modad. You can use Senses. Uh, some certain facilities are free. You need to figure it out, like what kind of grabbing you are performing, and accordingly you can find that. I guess I've already answered this one. Do we need to hack the CCTV to get the real time feed? No, this is whatever we are showcasing is the part of the passive techniques that is being exposed. We are not actively engaging with any of the stuff. It is like the Shubham has mentioned that if you visit to the windy.com, that is majorly maintained to the weather forecasting site, is do have the facility of showcasing you the data, the weather facilities, weather activities in the real time through the CCTV cams, and that can be used to even side anglely see the activity. So we have what we have shown here is from the windy itself. We don't have to actively interact with any of the things and perform all the things from the ethical point of view. Yeah. And we can industry infrastructure threat using only infrastructure undersea. Yeah, Shivam, you want to take this one undersea infrastructure one?
Yeah, sure. So if you are trying to build upon the infrastructure regarding the sea cables that you are seeing, that yes, one can do much more further. Other than that, if it's about the submarines that you are tracking, then they are meant submarines are meant to be dark and as such it's not that easy. Does requires you to utilize information from various sources, from your social media profiles where the last seen it was there, and then you can utilize that in order to map that infrastructure that you are seeing.
Yeah. Now the question: what are some good practices to keep in mind while studying maritime ocean? Uh, yeah, so like one of the good practices we can say always is to use the correct set of objects, because you always need to hide your identity. You don't need to spill your own information. So that is one of the biggest part. If you are following any sort of ocean investigation, the biggest part is to use the object. Second is to understand how the underlying techniques work. So like if you're talking about the IMO, MMSI number, we have described these two. There are lots of other stuff that also goes in, but the pivotal one is the IMO and the MMSI number. So like to see that IMO number remains the constant, MMSI number might be changing. So if you see these kinds of information that is changing, these frequencies, this kind of frequently changing happening, then it might indicate that it's something wrong is happening. So that kind of information is important to study the maritime ocean. Is it possible to track any ship by using the consignment number? Directly, I would say we have not seen any sort of investigation where we can see that consignment number can be used directly to track the ship, because once it has its own privacy matter. Like you can see the packages from where the consignment is being traveling, but you cannot have know the from which particular ship it is being happening. But if you know that, like let's say particular voyaging company is packaging your ship, and you know your the particular consignment might have been gone from Europe to, let's say, Africa. So you know that this which particular company ship is going in the real time from Europe to Africa, that might have your consignment. So directly there might be not linkages, but if you have the different sorts of information and you can interlink them, you might have the data for you. Shubham,
So, not sure. Yeah.
I'm a number is two.
Yeah. So it totally depends. Then yes, it can be spoofed. There are different case studies that are there. So with respect to the hull numbers, also it is seen. And however, you can identify that if the IMO number is from a broken ship or the scrap ship, then yes, it has been spoofed out there. It has been utilized in various sense. You can utilize GeoInt in order to identify these kinds of ships, even to understand if the IMO number that they are utilizing is actually related to them. So they are more of the logical checks that you can utilize.
Yeah. What was the main and biggest analysis from the case study? Yeah, so like in the Bella one case study, the one of the biggest thing that we have seen is that how frequently the MMSI number change and how it has changed its identity. It has become like a ghost ship because initially no transponder was able to decode the data, no transponder was able to get the data. But once we have seen the different MMSI number, we start tracking it, like we have seen in, like the data was 21 days ago, but suddenly we got the 4 days ago data. So that kind of shift has happened when we try to see from the different perspective. So satellite
In
is.
here, in what ways is satellite AIS more useful than terrestrial AIS? So, satellite AIS and terrestrial AIS does have different works around them. For example, as Saga described, that satellite, like terrestrial AIS, does have a particular range that is 15 to 40 nautical miles around that, and satellite AIS covers more of the global perspective. Other than that, your terrestrial AIS does are more of near real time. They're near instantaneous response out there, and satellite AIS does carry a bit of the latency that we do have. And so, in ideal scenarios, what we can say is that satellite AIS does not completely replace terrestrial AIS. They actually complement each other. The terrestrial AIS provides you much of what we say that are high frequency, instantaneous response, near real time feedbacks, and satellite AIS helps you to track these vessels even in the when they are very far away from the range that we do have for the receivers and transponders that we do have. So satellite AIS provides you more of the strategic, visibility for these vessels that we do have.
uh, what software or website do you use for software accounts? And yeah, so like it generally depends. There are lots of websites that one can use, like we have shared about, like you have to have your temp mail to create a temporary mail. There are some browser extensions that you can use that give you the temporary mail. They give you the disposable browsers that will have its own cloud infrastructure that will dislocate from your own entity, so you can use that. You can use VPN, Tor network, and for that, yeah, the Kunis is the same like Kali and CSL Linux. Yeah, basically the entire Linux kernel structure is always the same. It's just the tools and the attributes that it provides is different. And if you want to learn more about the CSL Linux or maybe Unix, there are lots of YouTube tutorials that are available. There are overall the documentation you can refer to, where you can lots of learn from that stuff. How did Maritime OSINT had influence during the US-Iran war, especially Strait of Hormuz, and how an investigator should update which AI should be used during mechanism? Yeah, definitely it does have an impact because anything that is happening in the Gulf, which has an oil, it do happen that the sanctions and the blockages might happen. So from the Maritime OSINT perspective, we can see that what kinds of ships were being hold of, which country ships were being hold of, which country was sending the reinforcement, which from where these particular special operations ships might be linking and might be lining and maybe leaking some kind of information that tells you the incident that might be happening in real time. For instance, on a particular port, you can find a ship A that might not be available anywhere, but you might happen to get it on the AIS hub, and you might see that this is the reinforcement ship. So you know that something is happening on this particular area. So they tell you because if something, some country is sending reinforcement or troops or maybe cargo, anything on a particular thing, there is something event that's going to happen. So in a way, yeah, it's helpful. We'll talk about the AI. There is no one right AI. We would say you have to work on the combination because they do hallucinate. You might not find always the right set of data. So yeah. You have to figure it out accordingly and analyze it.
Yeah. And just wanted to add with respect to the AI, don't just rely blindly on what the AI is giving you or providing you the information out there. Try to understand and correlate, as Saga said, from different models that we do have in order to get this information. Try to follow from the how the investigator should update itself is getting the information a lot from these social medias or the news that you do have, and continuously updating yourself regarding that. So just wanted to add on. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. How should analysts quantify confidence when every layer of maritime data can be manipulated? What problems unsolved by current OSINT tooling? Yeah, definitely. When we are dealing with something that is being open source, when being uh, meant from the contribution from different sides, it might happen that there's going to be spoofing. So the one of the biggest way to rectify or maybe reduce, we cannot say that 100% is always the result, but maybe rectify is to use the different sources. When you are check the, like, when you're looking at the AIS data, you're not looking at it from the marine vessel traffic or contributing sites. You might use some AIS, or you might use web SDRs to get those data. You might see even some different sort of things that we have not discussed covered in this part, that is the navtex codes, or maybe the GMDSS or EPIRB. So these are different protocols that might be used that will give you the information. So AIS might be, might be spoof, might be data might not be available from, but from you're getting the GPS coordinates through the navtex codes. You might see that there might be some sort of linkages or might not be. So yeah, that is one of the things. Why is it important for person to understand it's making public level information legally comprehensible? Shivam, you want to take this one?
Sorry, which
Uh,
one?
why is it important for OSINT professionals to understand the distinction
Oh,
between
yeah,
public level?
found out. Why is it important for OSINT professionals to understand the distinction between publicly available information and legally obtainable by ensuring legal and ethical compliance? Yes, it is very much useful to understand the distinction between the two, because when you are getting these informations, these are not just related to because just a particular vessel. It's much more related to a critical infrastructure that we do have. So you need to understand what the information, so whatever we shared out here is much more related to the publicly information, whether it be the CCTV cameras that we were telling you. It's more of the publicly available resources, right? And you have to understand, whenever you are trying to get the intricate details of some ships, you need to go through a legal procedure in order to get that uh, information, which is much more critical to these vessels, because all of them can be carrying different kinds of trades and goods. So it is much more useful in that perspective.
Yeah. Another one, like what
What
indicators
indicators
suggest?
suggest
Yeah.
that line source may be a part of coordinated influence operations? Okay, so what indicators that they suggest that a part of a coordinated influence operation is that you need to, that is where the part of getting the information from different resources comes into play. Whenever you are trying to get information about a particular asset, whether it be a vessel information or a coordinate of a vessel, you need to get that information through different resources, whether it be from the social media perspective, whether it be from the AIS platforms that we do have, or whether it be the VSAT techniques that we provided to the CCTVs. And then you also need to utilize these informations in order to understand what the data is being provided. And since, as Sagar told us more about that, these vessels can also be a part of the spoofed part. These locations can be spoofed. They can utilize a lot of these sections, whether it be the even the Hormuz incident. We have seen a lot of these spoofing continuously happening in the region itself. So yes, in order to understand these indicators, you will require to utilize different sources in order to get information about a particular asset, and combining that one, you can easily understand whether it is a part of a coordinated influence operation or not.
Yeah. And also keep an always an eye on the social media trends, maybe on the X and maybe TikTok, Insta, whatever the stuff, because these influence operations do start sometime from there. So they are always going to be helpful if you're looking at particular section of that.
Yeah.
Um, I guess
Any
that's
other?
yeah.
So yeah, sorry to disturb you guys. I think we are little bit late on time, so we need to finish it.
Yep.
So thanks Sagar and Subham for joining us in this session and sharing your valuable learnings to our attendees, especially about like maritime intelligence, because it is a very unexplored topic from ocean perspective. Like you won't be able to find much resources to learn further about it. So thank you again for joining us and giving us your valuable time. We are grateful for that. So bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.